So now welcome to the end section of my ownership lecture. This is a different lecture here because it will concern policy, politics and morality of the joint stock company and the corporation. In the 9th section I talked about comparative corporate governance, which is to study the governance, different governance systems that we have in the capitalistic society of today. And that there are, as I said, there are at least 3 different systems that one can identify, maybe more. It's a huge area, so don't believe that you know so much about comparative governance from my small intervention here. I hope that you will learn more about it from other parts of this course so that you can study it at other places. But now let's move to the morality and the politics of corporate governance. I mean, maybe that is one of the most important issue of corporate governance. Corporate governance is really about how do you create wealth in a country and how do you distribute it, and even more, who has the power. Corporate governance, we could say, is the power structure of a corporation. So, of course, it has a lot of things to deal with the morality and policy. So, here is the slide where you have this really controversial statement made by Milton Friedman. What is the aim of the corporation? Why do you have a corporation? And if we understand the aim of the corporation, then we know why we have corporate governance. And compared to me, that has said that well, it depends on who the principal is, because there could be different means for aims. For example, if you have a family, it's not making profit, it's the profit is a mean in order to create the goal of the corporation, which is survival, so new members of the family can gain wealth from the corporation. But for one person, Milton Friedman, it's very clear. It is to create profit. There is only one. This was the debate about social responsibility. Should corporation assume social responsibility? As I told you, when I had the section on family firms, they assumed social responsibility really without knowing that it's social responsibility. It's part of their business idea. No, social responsibility of business is one. To use its resources and engage in activities designed to increase its profits so long as it stays within the rules of the game, which is to say, engage in open and free competition without deception or fraud. So, Milton Friedman, he is a professor at the University of Chicago, which is a well-known place for these new liberals that are extreme in their market orientation. That, as Pharma, also got the prize from the Swedish Central Bank, the prize in economic sciences in memory of Alfred Nobel, which is not a Nobel Prize, but it is a prize that is given in the memory of Alfred Nobel. Milton Friedman states that profit is the only thing. A corporation should not engage in corporate social responsibility if it doesn't increase the profit. But it shouldn't just do social responsibility. It should do social responsibility if it increases profit, not if it decreases, because that is stealing from the shareholders. Because the corporation has only one goal, and that is to satisfy the shareholder, and the shareholder has only one goal, and that is to have profit. So it's a very simple-minded, it's a very simple idea, but the beauty of simple ideas is that it's easy to criticize, yes, but it also makes it very clear. If it's not profit, what is it? Do the managers or the board of directors have the right to use part of the profit in order to finance Oprah, for example. If it doesn't contribute to profit, don't they take money that should have been put as dividend to the shareholders and then decided to put it on Oprah? Isn't it better that you take the money, you give it through dividend to the shareholders, and then they can put it to finance Oprah? If you believe that there is this delegation of rights, then the board of directors do not have the right to finance Oprah if it's not creating profit for the corporation. Then they have to give the money to those that have the ultimate rights, and that is the shareholder, and they can put the money on Oprah. That is the idea of Milton Friedman. Everything of the money that are used that do not increase the profit is stealing money from a shareholder. Quite a dramatic idea, yes. But now let's turn it the other way. I would like to say that shareholders are misconducting. They are the agents of bad morality. I call them bad losers. Bad losers, you know, when you're playing poker, a bad loser is one, for example, if you win a lot in poker, you have the responsibility to invite the other ones to win the money back. If you just run away, that's not a good winner. But then bad losers, they are the worst ones. Those that would like to be part of a game if they win. If they don't win, they run away. No, you have to accept the risk of being a winner and the risk of being a loser. So look at the rights of ownership that Alkan Demset said. Yeah, you have to be the central party, you have to observe input behavior, you have the right to alter the contract to the residual, you have the right to the residual and to transfer seller's rights. Wow, but no liability. No, you're not liable for the debts. You are liable for the debts until the share capital is consumed. And that is the very basic of my moral critique of the joint stock company, the limitation of liability. As Alkan and Demset is saying, you have the right to the residual. That is simply not true. That is not true. Because I try to show it on this slide. As a shareholder, as I told you in the very beginning of my lecture in the second section, in the 1800s, they changed the liability from unrestricted liability to limited liability. So instead of assuming all the debts of the corporation, a shareholder only assumed the debt that is part of the money that they paid in advance, which they had to do because otherwise they were running away. So try to look at this image here. We have the losses to the left and the profit to the right. The residual consists of both the profit and the losses. Look now, the black one is the one that is assumed by the shareholder. All the profit is assumed by the shareholder. If there is any profit, it goes to the shareholder. So, I'm liable. I assume all the profit. So, I'm a perfect residual capital in this sense. All profit goes to me. Then look at the left. Then you have the share capital. That is the money that the shareholder has put in advance. That's the capital that is really owned by the shareholder and it's invested in the corporation. That's the credit part. And when there are losses, that one, the share capital is consumed. But if the losses are bigger than the share capital, the shareholders do not have to give in more money because they have limited liability. Their liability on debt side, not on the profit side, but on the losses side, is the share capital. If the losses are bigger than the share capital, then someone else has to pay the credit, that the debts. It's the other credit suppliers. They don't get paid. They lose their money. So that is really the limited liability. The point with the limited liability is that the liabilities on the losses is limited, but it's not limited on the other side, but on the bad side. So what you can say that there is an asymmetric distribution of the residual. Shareholders assume all the residual on the positive side, but only a limited part on the negative side. So there is an asymmetry. The other thing is the red one, and that is that the debts of the corporation is not assumed by the corporation and the shareholders. It has to be assumed by other credit suppliers. So the corporation push out the debts to others that are not really in the corporation. They have just been providers of input material. They have been laborers working, and now they don't get the money paid. So they loses the money. So that is what I call socialization of risk. You take the risk of the shareholder and you put it to others that are not shareholders through this limited liability. So when you make losses that are bigger than share capital, you socialize the risk. You put the risk out in the economy to other credit suppliers. Oh, it's terrible. This is limited liability. Now comes the morality. If you have a child, or when you were a child, I'm sure that you were taught two moral principles, the causality principle and the symmetry principle. The causality principle says, those shall be liable for the consequences of their actions. If you do something and that creates effects, you're liable for these effects. If you throw the ball through a window and it crashes, then you are responsible for the crash and you have to pay for the window because you created it. You are the reason why the window broken. You pay for it. That's a causality principle. It's not applicable on shareholders with limited liability owner. Shareholders, since we believe that they, in this distribution of rights, that they delegate the rights. All the rights belong to the shareholder, but they are delegated, and then under control of the shareholder, but they are delegated. It's the right of the shareholders. And one of these rights, and those rights make this corporation. And in the implementation of these rights, the corporation can do so much losses that the share capital is not enough. Then there will be this socialization of the risk by others paying the debts of the corporation. So the shareholders influence the corporations, but they are not liable for the consequences. They do the actions, but they are not liable for all the consequences. They're liable for the consequences if they are positive, and only on a restricted level if they are negative. They are breaking the causality principle. Imagine the child says that, yeah, I broke the window, but the cost of the window is too much. I cannot pay, so I run away. Ciao. The other principle is the symmetry principle. You tell a child that if you are in the game, you have to assume the game. If you enjoy the benefits, you should enjoy the losses also. You cannot only be part of the game if you win. You have to be part of it even when you lose. When you are playing football and the other team is scoring a goal on you, you cannot say, okay, I'm out, I'm leaving, I'm going playing bowling. No, you have to do the whole, 90 minutes. That is a symmetry principle. Such as enjoy the benefits shall suffer the losses. No, shareholders do not obey this principle. We enjoy the benefits, but only part of the losses. If the losses is a little bit bigger, we run. We leave the game. No. So it appears that the shareholder with limited liability are breaking two important morality principles that we have, that we teach our children, and that we try to live according to these principles when we are grown up. That if I do something, I assume the responsibility, even if it's bad. And if I do something and get a good thing, I have also to accept if there are bad things. The causality principle and the symmetry principle. Shareholder, oh no. So then the interesting question is, why do we accept that shareholders, that the dominant economic organization goes against two very strong principles in morality of human beings? You would not accept your child to behave like a shareholder. Why do we accept shareholders behaving like this? It's a good question. I've written an article about it. I have several suggestions why, because and this and this and that. I think that at the very end, you arrive at a very not so pleasant conclusion, and that's saying we gain so much of the joint stock company with limited liability that we have to assume the morality costs, to break the causality principle, to break the symmetry principle, because we gain so much. Yes, morality is very good, but since there is a price, well, let the shareholders be a little bit bad losers, because through these bad losers, we gain so much other. Unfortunately, that is what I think is the rule of the joint stock company. Maybe I'm wrong. So let's go to more policy and political implications. Because the political and normative and ethical problem is, we could ask the question, now we know, I mean, reality is like it is, but we could ask the question, who should be the principal? After all, we have legislation, we could influence how we structure corporate governance. So who should be the principal? And then when we have decided who should be the principal, could we decide also what should be the will of the principal? Is it like Adam Smith says, like Milton Friedman says, that if you have a corporation that is run in order to create profit, or if you have a corporation that is run by an individual that tries to make a living out of it, that creates heaven on earth. No problem. And then you have legislation in order to restrict their action. So who should be the principal? Well, principal, you know, this stakeholder list. You have many different. We have the shareholders, we think are the main principals of the corporation. You could have the debt holders. The debt holders are the ones that assume the responsibility to be a principal when the shareholders are fired in bankruptcy. You can have employees. Today, they are considered to be principals in Germany, for example, where they constitute 50% of, or almost 50% of the board on certain corporations. That then now today we could think about well, we have this Greta effect, the Swedish young girl that says that you are just thinking about yourself, you're not thinking about us, the young ones, and you are certainly not thinking about those that do not even have a voice here, the unborn. It should be the unborn that are the principal, because they are the ones that are going to inherit the things. Customers should be the principal because they are the ones that suffer the products. Labor unions, well, they are in Sweden, for example, part of the principal because they have a representative at the board. The neighbors, I mean, if you have a factory, those people that are living in the surrounding of the neighbor, shouldn't they have capacity to influence what is being made in the corporation? Society as such should influence. Suppliers, nature, should that have a voice? And who is, it's as complicated with the unborn, who should be the representative of those that cannot speak, the nature, or those that do not exist, the unborn? Manager, state. You can always find at least one person that states that one of these should be the principal. And then you should think, why? What should be the reason for this principle? Is it the residual, the possibility to assume a profit? Is the risk? Because normally people don't really like risk, that you have a high latitude between the profit and losses. Should it be because of competence, those that best can manage a corporation. And how do we know who can best manage a corporation? Should we have a corporation managed by professors because they are extremely competent, like me? Well, I don't think so. So that's a good question. The next question is, what should be the will of the principal? What should be the guiding motivator of the principal? I have at least 3 or 4 motivators of a principle. You could have the idea that reasons to act should be because of self-interest, and that is the Adam Smith and the Friedman and all these economists saying that it's the self-interest that guides people. An individual act upon a calculus where the cost and benefits for the individual are summed together through a preference function into a utility which produced the action. So if I can gain, that's good. Then I act. If I cannot gain, I do something else. That is the basic of agency theory. That is the idea with the generalized shareholders that are looking for profit. So self-interest. Many of you believe that self-interest is the guiding principle of human beings. After all, we look after us, not others. Is that true? Now look at Titanic. You know, the ship that went down. It was 1912 or something. There are lifeboats. You are standing in the queue to the lifeboat. Maybe you are like me. I'm 63 years of age. I'm standing there with my daughter. She's 30 years of age. She don't have a child yet. And now the guy that is controlling the lifeboat says, one more person. What would happen? According to self-interest, I would look for myself, the profit of myself. I don't look around. I care about myself. So I will take my daughter, because I'm a little bit stronger than my daughter, and I push her away. And then I go into the boat. That is the essence of self-interest. You don't care about anything else than yourself. You don't care about society. You don't care about your wife or your husband or your boyfriend or your girlfriend. You don't even care about your kids. You care about yourself. That is self-interest. But then everyone realized that that would not happen. What would happen is that I would say, okay, I go down into the bar, I take a cognac and a cigar. I say ciao and goodbye to my daughter. She will survive. That's good. One reason is the selfish gene saying that I'm more interested in my gene's survival than me. And through my daughter, my gene will survive. Maybe I will die because of age and all these things, but my daughter will continue with my life. That's why I don't push my daughter away. That's why I say, you go. So that's one reason. So that is kind of self-interest, but a genetic self-interest. If it would be another person's daughter, I would push her away because I care about my genes, not others. Then we have this idea with belongingness. As an individual, you act in order to belong to a group, and over time you adjust to the norms of the group through accepting them or internalizing them, socialization. And that is the existing motivation in stakeholder theory, stewardship theory, and when you focus on stakeholders, belongingness. We as human beings, we are probably genetically driven to adjust to other people because we can survive in a group. As individuals, we don't survive. A human being that is alone will not survive in nature, but together we can survive. That's why we have a tendency to adjust to other people, to accept norms, and try even to behave so we fit into a group. That is belongingness. So that's another reason to act. I would like to be part of a group. Then we have the third motivation, that's care. An individual act towards those that the individual have a close relationship with care, considering the concrete individual, and tries to understand the needs through empathy. And that is the feminist ethics closely related thing. You are acting in order to satisfy those people that are in your vicinity. It has some interesting implication, and that is that you are the further away a person is, the less you take care of them. But it's also care. Remember, if you are Christians, you have been trained to think that the golden rule says that you should do to others what you think they should do to you. That's quite an egoistic principle. It's saying that you assume that the other person is like you, and then you act as if it's you that you're acting towards. So you are satisfying yourself. That's the golden rule of Christianity. It's a rather egoistic. Care is not egoistic. It's not Christian to take care of other people, because care is trying to find out what would the other person like me to do? What can satisfy the other person? So it's not a golden rule. And then you have the fourth reason to act, duty. An individual perform an action because the individual consider the action to be obligatory, since it's fair or just. That is when you have concern for society and you are living by an imperative. That is the duty. You have to do this because you have decided that this is right to do, and therefore you do it. You don't look at the consequences, you don't care about the consequences, you just do what is right. And I'm sure that, well, men, for example, some men think that they should go to war, that they run the risk of being killed, but they think this is the right action, therefore they go to war. It's an absurd action, I think, but some people do it, and it's because of the duty. I do other things out of duty, even if it's not really good for me. I mean, there is a reason why I'm fired as a professor, because I performed what I was thinking was my duty, and it didn't fit to the university, so ciao, goodbye. But that is a correct action for a person that is following the duty, doing what is right, independently of the consequences. You know, the self-interest, that is when you think, what is the consequence for me? And then you calculate and find out what to do. When duty, you do never calculate what are the consequences. You just find out, is this right or is it not right? So these are four different motivations for people to act. Think about yourself. Maybe you think that self-interest is the basic of all motivation. I'm pretty sure that you can find that you have done actions where you do it in order of belongingness. You go to celebrate Christmas with all the family. Well, maybe it's fun, but maybe it's not really so fun. But you do it because you know that it's good for you, because then people see that you are within the family, and if you run the risk of being unemployed, you will get help from the family. Maybe you participate in the Christmas because it's taking care. Some old folks think it's nice if you come to the Christmas celebration. Therefore, you go, even if it's not fun. But you know that other people like it when you show up, so you do it for them. And duty, maybe you think that it's a duty to perform Christmas, maybe not. I don't know. I think it's a duty to participate in the election. I participate. I go and put my vote, and I think also that it's an obligation to vote on a party, even if you don't find any party that fits you. You have to do it. That is the obligation you have. If you live in a democracy, you have to use your right to vote. It's an obligation. It's a duty. Therefore, I do it. I don't like it. I would prefer to stay home because there are never any party that fits to me, but it's a duty. So think about yourself. I'm pretty sure that you are motivated by all these four reasons sometimes. And then look at this, the principle. Should we have a principle that are guided by duty? I know one principle that has been guided by duty. I interviewed one chairperson once, and he said that we have decided to make this investment, and we were thinking about Finland or Sweden, but since we are a Swedish corporation, we should promote Sweden. So we made a decision to put investment in Sweden. That is not self-interest. It's maybe not really belongingness, or you could say it's care, but it sounded like duty. As a Swede, you have a responsibility to look after your country, and we did it through making this investment. So, and then end up in the very end, what could be the ultimate political implication? Now we are talking politics, not science, so maybe I should be silent. But if Europe, that we live in, that I live in, have the mission to integrate with diversity, which is this idea that is here, vive la différence. We should not promote the Marxian idea or the Alkian Dempsey's view of capitalists all being the same. We should enjoy the diversity. And if we see that there are pressures towards reducing diversity, we should try to find mechanisms in order to keep up the diversity. Because through diversity, as I said, maybe you get competition sometimes, but you can also get cooperation. So in the European Union, we shouldn't strive towards capitalists all being the same. We shouldn't strive towards one governance structure, one corporate governance structure in Europe. That's really not good. That's probably not good in corporate governance, because we need different forces. So that was the end of my lecture of ownership. There is a difference. There are different owners. There are different corporate governance systems. There are certain morality problems. And governance is very important, because that is the one that directs the corporation. And the corporation, as we know it today, is the one that is really together with markets and government, creating all the wealth that we are using and living by. And there should be kind of diversity in this. That is a policy implication. It's not science. So I will never examine you on should there be the diversity or not. I could examine you on the question, what are the pros and cons of diversity and of non-diversity? So thank you very much for attending all these parts of my lecture. Now the dog is screaming and shouting. I say ciao and goodbye. Thank you very much.